here on the extender package, and to thank my colleague, Senator Baucus, for his leadership on this legislation, because it is important legislation that my colleagues are going to be voting on in just a short period of time here. And Senator Baucus has been diligent in working with Senator Grassley on various provisions that I think are good for Washington State and good for the country, specifically the R&D tax credit and a continuation of that for 2 years. And I think that Senator Baucus and Senator Hatch worked out a more robust R&D tax credit for the future. The college expense deduction and continuation of that at $4,000. Many homeowners are struggling with many of their financial obligations, but college education costs just continue to rise, so making sure that they can deduct this expense is helping out and the taxpayer. And for us in Washington State to be able to continue to deduct our sales tax from our federal income tax obligations. Roughly about 18 years ago, this right and opportunity for Washingtonians to be treated fairly, just like other states in the union, and be able to deduct their sales tax was taken away from us. We just recently reestablished this policy, and this continues it for another 2 years, to say that we are able to deduct what obligations we pay to the state of Washington from our federal income tax obligations. So this, in fact, is stimulus to us in Washington State, and it's about tax fairness, and we're glad for 2 more years Washington residents will be able to either take a standard deduction or itemize their expenses and be able to deduct that from their federal obligations. But, Mr. President, I rise today, too, to remind my colleagues of the importance of the energy provisions that we are about to vote on, that we are making a significant change in energy policy by promoting clean energy solutions for our country. In fact, if we look back at the 2005 bill that we passed, which had many tax provisions in it trying to incent energy production, it was probably 2/3 for fossil fuel and 1/3 for green energy. This bill turns that equation right on its head. It's 2/3 for green energy solutions and 1/3 for fossil fuel, which I think heads us in the right direction as a Congress and as a country where we should be putting our priorities. This legislation unleashes the ability for us to focus on solar power in America. It unleashes the ability of solar power by giving it an 8-year tax credit horizon, the same we are giving to fuel cell technology. Concentrating solar technology is a new technology that holds great promise for us in America, and particularly the Southwest. We think over 400,000 manufacturing jobs could be created in the next 8 years with this technology, and many of those jobs will be throughout the United States. That gives the United States the ability to produce enough power for probably over 7 million Americans. It's a $232 billion investment that we expect to see into our economy from these types of investments in solar energy. So we truly are unleashing that power and producing what will be emission-free fuel for our economy. Second, we are incenting plug-in hybrid cars. At $7,500, American citizens will be able to be the first to get a plug-in car and use that to drive down their cost of transportation. If you think about it, instead of spending $4 a gallon for gasoline, with a plug-in hybrid, your cost per gallon would probably be only about $1. Significant savings for the American consumer who purchased this type of vehicle. And third, we are making, for the first time in the tax code, a deduction for what are called smart meters. Smart meter technology is going to help all of us understand the power that we are consuming and how we can save costs. I like to say that Tom Friedman has done a very good job of evangelizing this, because he believes that this is where IT meets ET, where internet technology meets energy technology. The fact that we can build a smart electricity grid that understands what consumers are using and allow consumers to help drive down their costs and help companies move power more efficiently around the electricity grid. Some of the estimates are we can save 10% on what power we are using today by just consuming it in more efficient fashion. And this provision will help with the deployment of smart meters and smart grid technology that will help us move forward. When you think about this platform of distributed generation, smart grid technology, the advent of efficiencies, in the long run, we can build a national smart grid that will help us immensely, because we know we're going to have an increase in demand, and we know we want to reduce carbon emissions. And we know that there are intermittent sources of power, like we're talking about with wind and solar, that we can work in cooperation with our other power sources. And we know that substituting electricity for oil can make a major transition for us in getting off our dependence on foreign oil. So all of these things are improvements to that electricity grid. It's like taking our two-lane dirt road highway that we currently have and turning it into a superhighway of a smart electricity grid that can empower us in making this transition. So I'm very happy that that provision made it into the legislation, and I thank Chairman Baucus and Senator Grassley for making that part of the tax incentives that we are working towards and moving ahead. And lastly, Mr. President, there are over $10,000 in tax breaks to American consumers to try to help them with the cost of their own energy costs for the future. I know from the presiding officer that in the northeast part of our country, a lot of people have suffered under the high cost of home heating fuel. This legislation helps them with tax breaks on wood-burning stoves so that they can install the latest technology to turn wood pellets into a better source of fuel and help drive down the demand on home heating oil and hopefully reduce the cost to many of the Northeast residents that are still using that as a power source. So the $10,000 in tax breaks that are eligible for, as I said, for things like plug-in automobiles, for wood stoves, for solar panels on the homes, small wind farms, a variety of things are going to help the American consumer shoulder the burden that they are now facing on higher energy costs. But we are taking this direction and moving closer to what we think the United States really can be a world leader in, green technology, to create a platform and the right incentives in this legislation to move our country off of fossil fuel and onto the technology that will make the United States a world leader. So I thank the President, and I yield the floor.
Senator from Montana.
Mr. President, I ask consent that the pending